My father looked at me across the hospital bed and said the words that would end everything between us. If one of us has to carry this family, it can't be you. You'll survive without the surgery. Your brother won't survive prison. My mother squeezed his arm and nodded, like he'd just suggested what restaurant to order from. Before I tell you what I did 7 days later, that made my mother call me at 2 a.m. screaming until her voice broke. I need you to do something for me. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and whether you've ever had that moment where you realized the people who were supposed to love you most had been using you your entire life. Because that's what this is a story about. Not a fight. Not a misunderstanding. A realization. My name is Rachel Bennett. I'm 32 years old. And until the afternoon of February 19th, I thought I had a family. I grew up in a 2-story colonial in Beaverton, Oregon, just outside Portland, with parents who ran 3 small bakeries under the name Bennett's Hearth. My mother, Margaret, handled the storefronts and the recipes. My father, Richard, handled the money, or at least he pretended to. My younger brother, Derek, was 28 years old. And according to my parents, he was the son. The rest of us orbited around. Derek was the kind of kid who got a new car at 16 because he cried when the old one wouldn't start. He was the kind of teenager who wrecked that car within a year and got another one because he'd been under a lot of stress. He was the kind of college student who attended 3 schools over 5 years without finishing a degree. Because the professors were unfair, the roommates were strange, and the cafeteria food made him depressed. My parents paid for every tuition, every deposit, every lease he broke, every bar tab his friends texted him about at 3 a.m. I paid for nothing of mine. I went to Oregon State on a partial scholarship, worked 30 hours a week at a campus IT help desk, and graduated in 4 years with a degree in computer science and $23,000 of student debt that I paid off by myself over the next 8 years. When I asked my parents if they could help with even one semester's books, my mother laughed nervously and said, "Rachel, honey, you're the independent one. Derek needs us more." That was the framework of our family. Derek needed. I provided. My parents managed the pipeline in between. For the last 6 years, I'd been working as a senior software engineer at a logistics company in downtown Portland. The job paid well, $96,000 a year, with a performance bonus that sometimes pushed it past 1 to 10. I had health insurance, but it was a high-deductible plan because I was young and healthy and I wanted the lower premiums so I could save for a house. That decision would later matter more than I could have imagined. In my spare time, from 2019 until the night everything fell apart, I had built the entire digital infrastructure of Bennett's Hearth for free. 3 point-of-sale systems networked to 1 central server, an inventory tracker that pulled supplier pricing in real time, a payroll system that calculated tips and tax withholdings for 18 employees, a customer loyalty app with a mailing list of 14,000 subscribers. I'd done it because my father had complained at Thanksgiving in 2019 that he was losing money to outdated software and couldn't afford to hire someone. I said I could handle it. I thought I was helping my family. What I'd actually done was build a cage that paid my father's salary while he told his country club friends that he was a self-made man. The first crack showed up on a Tuesday in early February. I was at my desk at work when my mother called me, which was rare. She usually texted, and even that was usually to ask me something about the bakery systems. She said, "Rachel, your brother's in some trouble. We need to talk as a family this weekend." I asked what kind of trouble. She said, "Your father will explain. Just come to dinner Sunday." Sunday dinner at my parents' house was a ritual I'd stopped enjoying years ago. But I still went because my mother would cry at me for weeks if I skipped. Derek was already there when I arrived. Slouched on the couch in the living room, scrolling TikTok. Not looking up. My father was at the dining room table with a stack of legal paperwork and a glass of bourbon. Which was always a bad sign. My mother was in the kitchen pretending to cook. My father told me that Derek had been involved in what he called a business venture that went sideways. When I pressed him, the truth came out in reluctant pieces. Derek had convinced 9 people, mostly older friends of my parents from church, to invest in a cryptocurrency trading fund he was personally managing. The fund did not exist in any legal sense. Derek had used the money, $84,000 of it, to pay down his credit cards, lease a BMW, and take a trip to Cabo with a woman whose name he couldn't remember now. 2 of the investors had filed criminal complaints. The district attorney's office in Multnomah County was reviewing the case, and Derek's attorney believed that if they couldn't make the investors whole within 30 days, he'd be charged with felony fraud and likely face between 2 and 5 years in state prison. I looked at my brother on the couch. He was still scrolling TikTok. He hadn't said hello to me when I walked in. He didn't look up now. My father slid a handwritten list across the table. This is what we need. $84,000 to pay back the investors and have them withdraw the complaints. $12,000 for his attorney's retainer. Call it $100,000 even. And your brother walks away with a clean record. He looked at me the way a man looks at a loan officer. Your mother and I have $46,000 in savings. We need you to cover the rest. $54,000. From me. To keep my brother out of prison for a crime he committed on purpose. Something in me broke quietly in that moment. But I didn't show it. I said I'd think about it. I said I needed to look at my finances. My father nodded like a man who'd already received the answer he wanted. My mother finally came out of the kitchen, kissed the top of my head, and whispered, "I knew you'd come through, sweetheart. You always do." I drove home that night and cried so hard in the parking garage of my apartment building that a security guard knocked on my window and asked if I needed help. I told him no. I was wrong about that. The next morning, at my desk, I felt a lump under the left side of my jaw. It was hard, about the size of a marble. And it had not been there a week before. I told myself I was being paranoid. I made a doctor's appointment for the following Monday anyway. My primary care physician felt the lump for about 4 seconds and sent me immediately to an endocrinologist across the hall. The endocrinologist performed an ultrasound that same afternoon and then a fine needle biopsy on Wednesday. On Thursday morning, she called me at work and asked me to come in that day if I could. I knew before I sat down. She said it was a papillary thyroid carcinoma, which was the good kind of thyroid cancer, if there was such a thing, because it grew slowly and responded well to surgery. She said the tumor was about 2 centimeters. It appeared contained, and she wanted me to have a total thyroidectomy within the next 3 weeks. She recommended a specialist named Dr. Flash Ting, Lynn Tran, at Oregon Health and Science University, who had a cancellation on March 11th. I asked her about cost. She said the surgery itself, the hospital stay, the pathology, and the follow-up radioactive iodine treatment, with my high-deductible plan, would come to approximately $19,200 out of pocket after my insurance kicked in. I would owe it within 60 days of the procedure. I had $11,000 in my emergency savings. I had another $21,000 in a house down payment fund that I had been building for 3 years. I had a $401K I couldn't touch without penalty. And I was about to be asked to give my brother $54,000 so he could stay out of prison for stealing from old people at my parents' church. I went home that Thursday night and sat on my kitchen floor, and did the math over and over, hoping it would come out different. It didn't. I called my parents on Friday morning. I told them I had cancer. I told them the surgery was scheduled for March 11th. I told them I needed $19,200 within 60 days, and I could cover about 11 of it on my own. I asked if they could help me with the remaining 8,000. It was the first time in my adult life I had ever asked my parents for money. There was a long pause. My mother started to cry. My father's voice came on the line. And he said, "Rachel, let's talk in person. Come over tonight." I drove to their house that evening, with a folder containing my biopsy results. The surgery, quote, and my insurance breakdown. I thought, in spite of everything, that this time would be different. This time the stakes were too high for them to treat me the way they always had. I was wrong about that too. Derek was not there. My mother had set the dining room table like it was a holiday. My father had the bourbon out again. I sat down, and before I could open my folder, my father folded his hands and said, "Rachel, we've been thinking about this all day. And your mother and I have come to a difficult decision." He told me that they understood I was scared. He told me that they loved me very much. He told me that they had looked at the numbers, and they simply could not help both of us. If they gave me $8,000, they would not be able to cover Derek's full amount. And Derek would go to prison. Then he said the sentence, "I will remember until the day I die. If one of us has to carry this family, it can't be you. You'll survive without the surgery. Your brother won't survive prison." I said nothing. I just looked at him. He continued. He told me my cancer was the good kind. He had Googled it that afternoon. He said papillary thyroid cancer had a 98% survival rate and that lots of people live with it for decades before they even do anything about it. He told me, Derek. On the other hand, I had a criminal trial in 30 days and no way out. He told me that my mother and he had prayed on it and felt that God was telling them that Derek needed them more right now. He told me that I was strong. That I had always been strong. That I would figure this out, the way I always figured things out. My mother was crying quietly into her napkin the entire time my father was speaking. When he finished, she reached across the table and took my hand and said, "You understand, don't you? Honey, Derek is our only son. You'll be okay. You've always been okay. Our only son." I pulled my hand back. I folded up my untouched folder. I stood up from the table. I walked to the door. My father called after me. "Rachel, don't be dramatic. We're still a family." My mother called after me. "Rachel, you'll come through. You always do. You always do." I stopped at the door with my hand on the knob. I turned around, and I smiled at them. It was the calmest smile I'd ever smiled in my life. I said, "Thank you for finally being honest with me. I've been waiting 32 years to hear it." And I drove home. I did not cry in the parking garage that night. I did not cry when I got into my apartment. I did not cry when I sat down at my desk and pulled up the server administration panel for Bennett's Hearth that I had maintained for 6 years. For the first time in my life, I felt something I'd never allowed myself to feel toward my family before. It wasn't anger. Anger is hot. What I felt was cold. And it was clean. And it was clarifying. I started making a list over the next 3 days. I moved carefully, and I moved legally. I had documented every hour I'd ever worked on Bennett's Hearth systems. Because I'd originally planned to claim the time as a tax deduction for business development. 6 years of logs. 2,473 hours. I had never signed a contract with the company. I had never been added to payroll. I owned, under Oregon law, the copyright to every line of code I had written, because I had written it on my personal equipment, on my personal time, and I had never assigned the rights to anyone in writing. I called an attorney named Marcus Weller, who specialized in technology and intellectual property. On Monday morning, I explained the situation. I sent him my logs, my code repository, my personal emails with my father, where he had specifically acknowledged that I was doing the work as a favor and owed no formal obligation. Marcus called me back that afternoon and told me that I had, in his words, one of the cleanest contractor, without contract cases, I've ever seen. I had two options. I could send a cease and desist and invoice the company for 6 years of back wages at a fair market rate, which he estimated at approximately $310,000. Or, I could revoke the software license under the Oregon Trade Secret Act and give the company 48 hours to transition off my systems before I shut them down. I chose the second one. I didn't want my parents' money. I wanted them to understand what they had been taking from me. On Tuesday morning, I drafted a formal letter on Marcus's firm letterhead and had it delivered by courier to my father's office at the Flagship Bakery on Hawthorne Boulevard. The letter stated that as of 5 p.m. on Thursday, February 26th, all software systems, databases, and digital infrastructure belonging to Rachel Bennett would be withdrawn from use by Bennett's Hearth LLC. The point-of-sale systems, the inventory tracker, the payroll system, the loyalty app, the mailing list, and the central server would all go offline at that time. Any attempt to access, copy, or reverse engineer the systems after that point would constitute theft of trade secrets under ORS 646. 461. The letter was signed by Marcus and copied to the Oregon State Bar. My father called me at 2:17 p.m. that Tuesday. I let it go to voicemail. He called again at 2:19 and 2:23 and 2:31. By 3 p.m. he had left 11 voicemails, each one louder than the last. I listened to the first one. He was shouting that I was being vindictive, that I was being childish, that I was ruining the family business over a misunderstanding, that I needed to call him back right now. I deleted the rest without listening. My mother called me at 4 p.m. and I picked up on the third ring because I wanted to hear her voice. She was sobbing. She said, "Rachel, please, please. Your father is having chest pains. You can't do this to us. We didn't mean it the way it sounded. Your brother needs you. We need you. We love you. Please. Rachel." I let her talk for almost 4 minutes. When she finally stopped, I said, "Mom, I have surgery in 2 weeks. I need to rest. I'm not taking calls from family right now." She said, "But Rachel, we are your family." I said, "You told me 2 nights ago that Derek is your only son." I heard you the first time. And I hung up. I blocked both of their numbers that night. On Wednesday, my brother showed up at my apartment building. My neighbor's Ring camera caught him pounding on the wrong door for 20 minutes, yelling that he wasn't leaving until his sister stopped being a psycho. He didn't actually know which apartment was mine. I'd never given him my exact address. He left when building security called the police, Thursday at 5 p.m. I logged into the master server from my kitchen table and I shut everything down. The point-of-sale systems in all 3 bakeries went dark mid-transaction. The digital menu boards went blank. The payroll system, which was scheduled to process the bi-weekly checks that night, did not process. The inventory tracker, which was scheduled to auto-order the weekend's flour and sugar from the suppliers, Did not order. The loyalty app pushed out an auto-generated goodbye message to all 14,000 subscribers, thanking them for their business and wishing them well. I hadn't even programmed that message. It was a standard decommission template. It just looked very personal. I turned off my phone and I went to bed at 8 p.m., and I slept for 11 hours for the first time in a month. My mother called me at 2, 1, 4 a.m. on Friday morning. I know this because she found a way to call me from a friend's phone that wasn't blocked. And she left a voicemail that lasted the full 3 minutes. The system allowed. I didn't listen to it until noon the next day. She was screaming. She was screaming that I had destroyed everything. That employees were calling, asking where their paychecks were. That the Saturday morning flower delivery hadn't come, and they'd had to close the Hawthorne location during breakfast rush. That my father had been admitted to the hospital with a suspected heart attack, which turned out to be a panic attack. That Derek's lawyer had told them they now had no way to pay him, and Derek was going to prison. And she was screaming. Over and over. How could you do this to us? How could you do this to your own family? I called her back at 1 p.m. that afternoon from my apartment. She picked up on the first ring. Before she could speak, I said, "You had a choice on Sunday. You had a choice on Tuesday. You had a choice every single time you took my work for free, and told yourself I didn't need anything back. You chose him. Every time. I'm just letting you live in the world you chose." She started crying. She said she was sorry. She said she didn't mean what she said about Derek being their only son. She said they would find the money for my surgery. They'd take out a second mortgage. They'd do whatever I needed. She said, "Please, Rachel, please, don't do this." I said, "Mom, you already did it. I'm just the one who finally stopped pretending." I hung up. I had my surgery at OHSU on March 11th. As scheduled. I paid for it with my savings and the house down payment fund. And I took out a low-interest medical loan for the remaining $6,000. Doctor. Tran got clean margins on the tumor. My thyroid, along with the cancer, was sent to pathology. The follow-up iodine treatment happened in April. By June, I was declared cancer-free. And I will be, God willing, for the rest of my life. Derek was charged with 3 counts of felony securities fraud in Multnomah County in late March. My parents were unable to cover the full restitution. Because Bennett's Hearth had lost approximately $41,000 in the weekend of the shutdown and had to sell the Hawthorne location to stay liquid. Derek accepted a plea deal and is currently serving 31 months at Snake River Correctional Institution in Eastern Oregon. He is eligible for parole in August of next year. My parents sold 2 of the 3 bakeries within the following 18 months. My father had to come out of semi-retirement to work the counter at the remaining location because they could not afford to hire a full-time manager. My mother wrote me a 7-page letter in October. I read the first page. She said she had been wrong. She said she had been so wrong. She said she had loved me the whole time, but had been too scared of Derek's rage to ever show it. She said she hoped I could one day forgive her. I folded the letter back up. And I put it in the drawer where I keep my tax receipts. And I went back to making dinner. I did not write back. I still haven't. I took a job at a biotech firm in Seattle last fall. The pay is better. The health insurance is better. The city is 2.5 hours away from Beaverton by car, which is exactly far enough. I bought a 1-bedroom condo in Ballard in December. I live alone with a cat named Turing. I see a therapist every other Tuesday. I am happier than I have ever been in my entire life. Last Christmas, for the first time in 33 years, I did not go home. I did not send a card. I did not call. I made a prime rib for myself. And I watched 3 movies in a row. And I did not cry once, People in my life? The few people who know pieces of this story sometimes ask me if I feel guilty, if I worry that I was too harsh, if I think about Derek in prison, or my father working the bakery counter at 68, or my mother crying alone in a half-empty house on Christmas Eve. And the truth is, I used to. For the first 6 months, I felt guilty every single day. I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear my father's voice, saying you'll survive without the surgery, and feel sick to my stomach. Not because of him, but because I had dared to make him face what he had said out loud. I don't feel that way anymore. Not because I stopped loving them. I'll always love them. You don't turn that off, no matter how much you want to. I don't feel guilty anymore, because I finally understand something that took me 32 years to learn. When someone shows you who they are by choosing, out loud, to let you suffer so that someone else doesn't have to, the cruelty isn't in believing them. The cruelty is in refusing to. The cruelty is in staying. The cruelty is in building their systems for free, and patching their roofs for free, and paying their bills for free, and pretending you didn't hear what they said at the dinner table. Until you've hollowed yourself out so completely that there's nothing left for anyone else to love. Letting people face the weight of their own choices is not revenge. It's not punishment. It's not even justice. It's the first honest thing you can do for yourself. After a lifetime of lying on their behalf, if you've made it this far, I want you to tell me something in the comments. I want you to tell me the sentence your family said to you that you've never been able to forget. The one you still hear in the quiet moments. The one that told you, if you were listening, exactly where you stood. Because I think there are more of us than any of us realize. And I think the first step out of a house like the one I grew up in is hearing someone else say, out loud, that they walked out too. And they're still here. And they're okay. I'm okay. I hope you will be, too.